Hello and welcome to Gardening Tips and Tricks, presented by Jackson County Library Services and the Jackson County Master Gardeners. My name is Spencer. I'm an adult services librarian here at the Medford Branch Library of Jackson County Library Services. Want to remind everybody to keep your microphone muted to avoid distractions for the presenters. Feel free to type questions in the chat as we go along, or you can raise your hand if that is easier. At the end, or when there is good natural pauses maybe between our two presenters, we can share any questions we have for Susan and Marsha to respond to. Before we get started, I do want to share our land acknowledgement, which is the Jackson County Library Services acknowledges that its libraries are located within the traditional lands of the Cow Creek Band of Umpqua Tribe of Indians and the Modoc Nation, as well as the Shasta, Tacoma, and Lagawa people, whose descendants are now identified as members of the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians and the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. We take this moment to recognize the Indigenous people whose traditional lands are where residents of Jackson County live today. JCLS is committed to fostering understanding, deep respect, and honor for Indigenous people, and we encourage you to learn about the land you reside on. For more information, go to jcls.org/land. Lastly, I do want to share that the views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the presenters and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Jackson County Library Services. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our presenters, starting with Susan. I'm going to unpin myself so everybody can see you, and feel free to get started.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see some people coming out on a Saturday. It's supposed to rain today, but it hasn't here. I don't know about where you are. Anyway, I'm going to start out. I'm only going to do a couple of topics, 2 or 3 topics, and then Marsha's going to do most of it. She's got a lot of good things to say. But I'm going to start out with how to get perfect apples from your apple tree. I hope some of you who are listening to this actually have apple trees and want to use your apples. Anyway, one of the worst pests for apple trees is the I'm going to forget the codling moth. Yes, exactly. And if you want good apples, you do need to protect your tree from it. Now, there are 2 ways to do that. One is you can spray, but you're going to spray several times during the summer. And you have to suit up and you have to use a fairly expensive spray. So it's 105 degrees outside. You got to put on the suit, you got to put on the mask. You're using this wand that's spraying this pesticide. You can do that if you want to, but I'm not the one to tell you about it because I don't do it that way. I do it what I consider the easier way. Now, the codling moth will light on an apple when it's very small, when it's very immature. I have a whorl or a cluster of apples. These were all blossoms that were pollinated. And the codling moth lights on it and lays an egg on it, which turns into a worm. And the worm burrows into this immature apple. And as the apple grows, the worm eats its way through the apple. Okay, that's why you see all those brown tunnels through the apple, and it kind of ruins the apple. Because all that brown stuff is frass or poop, worm poop, okay? And that's what that is. So if you're like me, you don't want to eat that, and you don't want your apples to have that. So what you have to do in order to protect your apples the easy way is, first of all, you find the apple that you're going to protect on this cluster, because you don't want to protect every single one of these, okay? The apple tree will set many more apples than it can ripen. It's too much for the tree. It takes a lot of energy for the tree to ripen an apple. There are maybe hundreds and hundreds of little apples on the tree, depending upon how old or how big your tree is. I have some trees that do have literally maybe even thousands. I'm not sure, but they're just covered with apples, and the tree simply cannot ripen that many apples. So the first thing you do is you figure out where the king apple is. The king apple is the one in the middle. See this one right here? You've got all of these around the edge. This is the king apple. This is the one that you want to protect with a bag. And you're going to slip a little bag over it that's meant for this purpose in particular. Now, let me show you what two different types of bags. This is one that I got online. It's, I think, kind of an organza, which, as you see, is kind of a mesh fabric. And it's got a little drawstring on it. And you can you see the little tiny apple in there? I don't know if you really can. Okay, I'm going to pull it out. Let me get this open. You can buy these online. I got this on Amazon. They are $15 for 100 of them. Okay, so they're very inexpensive and they're reusable. You know, the spray that you use is extremely expensive and it's not reusable, of course, but these little bags are. So the way you use them is that you slip this over. So you're going to like pull the drawstring until you have just a little hole here. And you're going to take the little apple and you're going to stick it in that hole right there. And you're going to pull the drawstring around it. And then I think you need to tie it again. Maybe put a bow or something like that in it so that you can easily pull it off. But so that it doesn't come off too easily. But what you're going to do is take some little scissors and you're going to cut off all of the rest of these apples because the tree cannot ripen all of those. The first year I was doing this, I thought, I don't want to lose all those apples. Oh my gosh, I'm losing 4/5 of my crop. So I didn't cut off all of them. I bagged maybe like 3 of them out of a whirl like this. They interfere with each other. The bigger the apple gets, the more they interfere with each other. And you have apples dropping off the tree because they can't develop into the size they should be. So you really have a better result if you do cut off the apples. It's also good for your tree because they can't ripen all of the apples. You're not asking them to. And you're going to get a bigger, nicer, better quality apple from this king apple. Now, one of the things you want to do right away is when you're picking out the apple you're going to bag, is you want to look to see that it hasn't already been infected with a little worm going into it. And the way you can tell that, it'll look kind of in one of 2 ways. And I'm not sure whether you can actually see this or not, but I'm going to show it to you. Can you see that little black spot right there? Okay, that is where the worm entered this little immature apple. Okay, that's one way that it looks. You'll see a kind of a hole. If the apple you were going to bag has this on it, you don't want to bag it, you want to cut it off. Okay, the other way is, and this is really might be difficult to see, but see right here, do you see it's kind of like a little indentation? It's like a little pinprick. Sometimes the little hole that the worm makes kind of closes up and it's a little brown scab or just a little indentation like this. You see that the apple has already been infected and you want to choose another one. Okay, so here is another kind of bag. Before I found these, and I think those are very easy, and I think those are going to be a good one to use. I made some of my own, like this, out of scraps of fabric that I had, and I put a little zipper in the top. Now, you may think, oh my goodness, she's so obsessive. Well, I guess I am, because I really like perfect apples. And that's what this gave me. So you stick the apple in the corner here, in the corner of the bag, and you just zip it up. It's very easy. And these bags last for a long time. So if you're so inclined, and you have some extra scrap material and some zippers, you could do this. Now, the one thing that is not so good about this is that it's opaque and the sun doesn't really get through it. So at the end of the season, after all the codling moths have flown through, which is the end of August, you want to take that bag off so that the apple can get some sun and it can ripen. When you take it off, it's going to look pretty green. Let's say it's a red apple. It's going to look kind of green or yellowish. It won't be its normal color. So you need to give it about a month. Now, I have 2 trees that are fall trees, and I don't actually harvest them until after the first frost, because that's when they get sweet. So I take this off at the end of August, and by the time I'm ready to harvest them, then they're nice and red, and they're lovely. The thing that might be good about this one, and I think it's going to be, is that the sun does get through this. So I think it'll be red to begin with. Okay. So I think that might be an advantage for this one. Okay. Now, every once in a while, you will find that with one of your bagged apples, that the codling moth lights on it and gets confused, thinks it's on an apple. And actually, it lays a little egg, and the egg hatches. And I don't know if you can see this, how well you can see this, but do you see that little brown thing right there? That is a worm that.
Hold it higher.
Can you see it now? See the little brown, and you see there's kind of like a little webbing around it or something like that. But, oh, I think the worm dropped off. Anyway, that's what'll happen sometimes. So occasionally you're going to find a little worm on the outside of your bag, and you know it worked because it didn't get into your apple. And what you will get is bigger, nicer, juicier, pest-free apples. So think about how expensive apples are. I haven't looked at the price recently, but a small to medium-sized apple is about half a pound, is up to half a pound. And a big apple is like 3/4 of a pound, and a gigantic apple is like a pound. Apples can get to be $2 to $3 a pound. If you want to send an apple with your kids to school in their lunch every day, that's going to be an expensive undertaking. This will, help you with your grocery bill quite a bit. Okay, now just a couple more things that I want to do. I used to use like a regular Sharpie in order to, those little white tags that you have that you put the name of the plant on and you stick it out by the plant so you remember what variety you used. Well, by the middle of the summer, they were white again. The writing was all gone because it bleached out with the sun. So I asked Marsha one time, Marsha, what do you do about this? And she said, there is an answer to that. And it's this. It's this kind of pen. It's the kind of pen that ranchers use to mark the ears of their cattle. This is really a permanent marker. So if you use something like this one is Tag Ink Marker, it's called, and it's a Waite. I've used this, and you can use it from year to year to year. I use it on my tomatoes. As a matter of fact, I have cages for the tomatoes, and then I take a piece of duct tape and I fold it over the cage, or I put it on a stake and I write with this marker on it what the name of the tomato is. And every year I can use the same one over and over again because this does not wash out. Now, I've also had some pretty good luck with a Statler pen. You can get these online as well. This is reasonably permanent, and it also has a thinner nib, easier to write with. So these two things are really good to know about. One more thing I have. Does anybody know what this is? This is actually a Velcro. It's Gardener's Velcro. So if you need to tie up your tomatoes to a stake, or you need to tie your roses to a lattice or something like that, the canes on the roses, this is a great thing because it sticks to itself. Now, of course, I didn't bring a piece of it, but it sticks to itself, and it actually is very well. It's going to stick to it. You see that how it sticks to itself? It's very strong, extremely strong. It lasts a long time, and at the end of, let's say, the season, if you're using it in your garden, in your vegetable garden, at the end of the season, you can actually pick these up and you can save them for next year, and you can use them again. You can use them year after year after year, and eventually they'll probably wear out. But I have like a little yogurt container that I keep my pieces in. Okay, so those are all my tips.
I have a question.
Yes, okay.
So, are you going to mention the surprise that you got on your apples and how lovely it is?
Well, I don't know if I could describe it so well, but I can try. Some of the cloth bags that I have are fabric that has a pattern on it. And that pattern, some of it lets the light through. And so the apples turn red in those places, and some of it blocks the light, and those stay kind of yellow or green. So when you take the bag off, sometimes you have a pattern that looks exactly like your bag on the apple. Of course, it goes away once the whole apple gets exposed to sunlight, but it was kind of fun. And I don't have an example of it because, of course, I've eaten all the apples, but any rate. All right. Well,
I was thinking that, some industrious person might be able to start a real fad with that idea, because they were beautiful. I saw them.
yes, they were. And I wish I had one to show you, maybe next year. Okay. Well, this is the right time to be bagging your apples, by the way. I was doing it on Thursday and Friday this week because that's the size they are. Okay. Oh, one more thing I want to tell you is if you don't, all the apples that you don't bag, the ones that are left over, you must cut them off the tree. Okay. So let's say you only want 50 apples. So you only bag 50 apples. You must cut the rest of them off because the codling moth will get in there, and year after year after year, they'll keep coming back. So you need to cut those off. So, and it's good for the tree because it limits the amount of energy they have to put into ripening their fruit. Okay, all righty. Marsha is up next.
Susan, before you run away, we had a question that I think might be specific to you.
Well, good afternoon. It's a good day to stay indoors and learn about some tips and tricks for your gardening. So when you go out, you will be all set getting rid of any pests and diseases on your plants. The best gardening practices follow the strategy of integrated pest management, or IPM for short. It's recognized throughout the world, and it uses environmentally safe methods to control different insects and diseases and weeds, so that you're not targeting pests or any insects or things that are nice that you want in your environment. They won't get damaged. You're just trying to target the pest insects so that you're not using something really toxic to like spray like that will kill every insect or different plants that you spray. You want to keep those safe for the environment and just target your pests. And it's not always killing every single pest in your garden. because most people want to, use the worst toxic chemical there is, and they're not only taking out the pest that they don't want, they're also killing a lot of beneficial insects. Only 1% or so of the insects like in the world are doing damage to crops. Okay, so IPM involves first prevention, and that is to choose disease and fungal or disease resistant plants. That way you never have the problem in the first place. So do a little research before you buy things and see if you have powdery mildew in your yard every year. Don't plant cucumbers that are noted for having powdery mildew. So you don't have to go out and buy expensive sprays to try to get that under control every single year. So there are a lot of good varieties that are resistant. You can look at some of the university sites online, and they will give you a list of various ones that are insect and disease resistant. Another thing that IPM does is use cultural controls. And those are like doing correct watering and pruning, pH adjustment of soils, or improving drainage, things like that. Physical controls, barriers, traps, weeding tools, and biological controls are like getting beneficial insects attracted to your garden by planting different flowers that will attract them, and also using botanical compounds. And then last of all is the chemical controls, organic and inorganic. So we're always going from the least toxic thing to going up higher and higher until the pest that you want controlled is controlled. The first thing you want to do is to identify your host of your insect or disease or the weed, because you need the correct method of getting rid of it. A lot of people will buy a pesticide thinking will take care of their insect. They just call it a bug, and then they will spray something that doesn't even affect it. So it's really important to identify the host first. And then after that, then you're all set to figure out what to do. And I'm going to show you some little tricks. One of the least invasive things is actually making a barrier from your plant to the pest. And I'm going to show you some things here. First of all, in the spring, I will put some plants out, and I always put a cover over them using different fabrics. I got like 20 cats in the neighborhood. They love my yard. They think every one of my raised beds is their sandbox. And so what I do is I get, first of all, I got Remay, and this is a cover cloth that will let light in and moisture, but sometimes it's not real strong. See how it tears really easy? And when you're putting that over your hoops, like this, sometimes when the wind comes up, we have this 5 o'clock wind tunnel coming through the Rogue Valley, and so many of my Remay got torn from flapping around because they weren't hooked down well. So I went to some stronger materials. First of all, I tried some tulle, because I thought, oh, that's nice. And it will keep some insects out. And yet let light in and water in. But again, when I was out and I had it over some stakes, I clipped it on some stakes. Can you see how that pokes like that? That can tear a hole in that, and then the tool just falls down on your plants. I like to have a lot of air circulation on my plants because that will stop some of the fungal growth, and that you don't want to have all that moisture trapped down there. So I kind of did away with using that. And next, I had some nylon jersey that sometimes it's in the inner sides of shorts and stuff, trunks. And this worked really good. It's real strong. It's made out of nylon. One of the material stores was going out of business, and so they had a bolt of it. And so it was really inexpensive. So I've been using that, and it lasts maybe 3 years or so. The sun kind of rots nylon after a while, but it lasted quite well. So if you have some of that around, that works good. And then I thought, instead of paying maybe $50 for some insect barrier, that I thought, what about sheer curtains, nylon curtains? Look how tough they are. And I found these over at the Goodwill on Lars Street in Medford. It's at the distribution center. Most people don't know they can go in there. And when they go in there, it's a real trip. There's just a ton of these tables with sides on. And when people give a donation, they just throw all the stuff right on those tables. And sometimes it's piled really high. They do try to section it off. So they have a place where they have like blankets and curtains and tablecloths and stuff like that. Well, I thought, well, these are quite large, and this would fit my one row of crops in my garden. And it even is sewn really nice on the edges, and you can put a string through there to hold it up and tie it on stakes. And this problem, it's so light. At the Lars Goodwill, they charge you by the weight. Well, this thing, it doesn't even, maybe 50 grams or less. And so it probably cost me a nickel for this. What a savings, hey? And then I looked at some more. I mean, they have those quite often there. Then I got one that has a little bit more texture to it, but it lets a lot of light in. It's strong. And again, probably 5 cents for that. And then I thought, well, gee, why not decorate my garden as I go? So there was one of these sheer curtains with all these wonderful little flowers on. And I thought, oh, wouldn't that be pretty? Having that over your hoops in your garden. And so again, really light. Maybe this one cost maybe a dime to a quarter instead of $50 for some insect cloth. Okay, so this is insect cloth. It's a little stiffer than the curtains, but actually it's got the same size holes. And it might last a little longer because it is a little bit thicker, very strong. So if you have a lot of money, you can go with that. If you're living on a fixed income like me, the Lars Goodwill is a good place to shop. So hopefully that little trick will save you some from spraying your crops. So I put that over some hoops. Now I found this is a child's toy. It says Brava Soccer. And this was over, there were 6 of them, and I thought, oh, those would make nice little hoops for the garden to put the curtains on. And so I put these in after my cat dug up all the onions I planted in a row. And I was so angry at it, and I thought, I gotta find something that's really good that can keep them out. And I put this up, and to make it even longer, there was another child's toy. And it had these stakes with it, and it had holes in right here. And the holes of this hoop fit in there. And then I made it huge. So you can do a different lengths. You could even cut these and make them however long you want. And then there was these balls. Thought, what the heck is this? It was some kind of child's building toy, and it came with these green or turquoise stakes, which fit into these holes. And I thought, oh, I have some of the stakes, you know, that you get like over at the Grange or so, or Lowe's, and they're really expensive. And I thought, oh, I could use that and fit those in there. And sure enough, they fit in there. And then I've got some bigger stakes. And I thought, well, how can I make that, use that? I just took a drill bit, the size of my stake, and I drilled out one hole. So I can use this for my larger stakes and for the smaller ones. And this is smooth. And so when you put your cloth over it, it's not going to poke and make a hole in it. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. Also over at Lars, I found some actual hoops. So it's just random what you're going to get over there. So the experience is worth it. And these only cost me a few dollars, and I have a whole roll then that I can put my cover cloth on. Also, on these kind of hoops, I found some clips over at the dollar store. I don't recommend them because they look at it, they rusted, and then the wire inside rusted. And worst of all is they're coated with a plastic on the tips here and on the ends. And that melted in the heat here. And so you had a little gummy mess every time you touched them. So stay away from them. They look like they would do a good job because they're made out of aluminum for the most part, but they got a little bit of something in there that makes it rust. So stay away from those. Also, I went online and got some that said that stainless steel, and they had these. And then I went out to try them. They don't hook on, and there's such a tiny little bit where they touch each other like that they snap right off here. And again, the outside is stainless steel, but the inside, look, it's all rusted. So you gotta be careful with that. Then I thought, oh, I'm gonna get one where I looked at all the comments, and the people said this one it didn't rust on them. And it's a cute little one with a little heart here. Stainless. And then on the side, you can see it has a little lip or gripping. There's no plastic that's going to melt or get brittle. And when you put it on, everything stays. It's not going to snap off. So I thought, oh, I finally lucked out after I wasted some money on these other clips. Okay. And most people use 1/2-inch PVC pipe. You can also get these clips, but oh, they're so hard to get on and off. You'd think it would rip your material almost. You can see how hard that is to kind of slip on, but that's also available. But my gosh, for cheap, you can do something better than this. Okay, so hopefully that that helped. Also, at the dollar store, I saw these waste baskets there. Okay, mother, I used to use styrofoam smooth balls to put on top of my steak so the material wouldn't tear. But those little plastic balls are gonna work great. So I got these because I have terrible snails and they can't get through here. So when I put my cabbage out and different flowers, first thing, I will put this over it and protect it. It does a great job. The snails never get in there. I use these little clips to go right through and hook them down into the soil so that when the wind comes up, the basket's not going to go anywhere. And along with that, if you do have certain cabbage family plants you put out early, the aphids come in first thing. And so of course they're going to get through here. So what I have here is one day I was over at Sherman-Williams paint store and I saw these paint strainer bags and they're fitted for a 5-gallon bucket and they use it, and they use their spray gun and that they have to have the no lumps in the paint. So they strain with it. And I said, these are really nice and strong. And then they would fit right perfectly over my little my basket here. And I would tuck it in. And this way the aphids or none of the bad insects, leafhopper, whitefly, or anything like that can get in and get my green crop, my spinach. The leaf miners can't get in there and get those little trails, call it the little maggot that feeds through the epidermis of the leaves and just makes your spinach all polluted. Well, this is great for a barrier. And I think I only paid 99 cents for these, and they probably are probably double that now with the inflation going on. And these baskets are going to last longer than me. And you can always respray them with some Rust-Oleum or something if anything gets rusted on that. But so far I've been using those for like 4 years and they look like they're brand new. So I have no problem with those. Another thing to show you is diatomaceous earth. This is really good for getting rid of ants or any insects you don't want crawling in your house. A lot of the all-natural pest controls people, they spray this all over the attics and in the under the floor, the crawl space, and anything that crawls over it will get like glass shards. Scraping them and then pierce their body and they'll dry out. These are actually prehistoric one-celled like algae creatures called diatoms. And when they since they're made of pure silicon, that's like glass. The only drawback with this is you need to keep it dry for it to be effective. If it does dry out, it should remain some of its scratchability, but you can keep it where it's not going to get water on it. That would be good. Usually they use it also for 3 inches around the perimeter of a house because that'll keep anything from crossing that and getting up on your house. like carpenter ants and such and such. And so what I use it for too is I feed the hummingbirds and make my own sauce for it. No red dyes. Want to protect them. So I was getting a ton of ants coming up over the hook. Let's see, here's another one. Like a hook where I hang it up. They were coming down and they would get into the bird feeder. Or here's a hummingbird feeder. So they would just climb down and get into there. So I found some of these really cool traps. Like this and that, really, really pretty. And so all you have to do is put some diatomaceous earth in there, and the ants will not go down and cross that because they know they'll get scratched to death, let's say. Sometimes you can use water in these, but because we have like an average of 100 degrees all summer, the water evaporates too fast. The diatomaceous earth, you put it in here once a year and it will stay there. It's not going to go anywhere. So that works really good. And if diatomaceous earth is good for a lot of different things around your the pet beds to deter fleas. And this one, you want to make sure you get food grade, because there's one for like swimming pools and whatever. You got to have for home and garden, but make sure it's food grade. Even people take this and they feed it to their animals and gets rid of parasites and stuff. So it's a really good product. I bought a 50-pound bag with it 30 years ago, and I still have some. It lasts forever. Okay. So a lot of people have problems with squash bugs. So one of the best tricks is to take some masking tape and you just wrap the sticky part outside your hand and you roll it around your hand and then tear it off. And then when you see adults or nymphs or the eggs, you can just slap them and they'll stick. I got all of these, and these are last year's. And you can see the eggs. And the little nymphs look like little spiders. They even had got a striped cucumber beetle in there too. So this is a really good way, but it's time consuming. If you have a ton of squash plants, then it can be a little overpowering. So sometimes what I'll do is I will go out with my shop vac, and what do I do with my shop vac stuff? Let's see. I'll be hidden under my cloth here. Well, I'll use a vacuum or shop vac, and then it's right in front of my face. Okay, so pretend this is the wand of your vacuum. I take a knee-high stocking like this, and I'll shove down in it and bend this over. And then I like to use these rubber bands that you get on some of the produce from the store because they're so nice and thick and you can stretchy and they last long. You put it on really tight because you don't want that to suck down into the vacuum. And then pretty soon you will get a sock of insects about that much, and then your vacuum will start struggling a little. Then you know you can pull it out and you take your insects, you can tie a knot in that and just douse it in some soapy water, and that will kill the insects inside. Then you can throw them in the trash, and then you can reuse your stockings. You can also use organza. I've done that with and with tulle. And here's my stash just from one squash. It was pretty bad. That's why I thought, well, I'm not gonna go pick them up with the tape. This would go much faster. So that works really good. Okay, and then another thing that you can use for certain insects like cucumber beetles, because they come in and they eat on all the cucurbit family plants. Now, reflective mulch is like aluminum and sandwiched in on some a plastic coating on both sides. Well, this stuff can be really expensive when you buy it, the real stuff. This is an emergency blanket, only costs a couple dollars. It will last a year, and you can grow your plants in here. You just stretch it out, make a little X where you're going to plant your like tomatoes or squash, because this will repel both the striped and the spotted cucumber beetles and aphids, white flies, and leafhoppers. It baffles them, so they don't know where to fly into the area, and so they stay away. I tried this at the extension and it worked fabulous. There was a small farms had a crop of squash growing. Oh, how many yards you would call it? Maybe 100 yards away. And they were inundated with cucumber beetles, and I didn't have a single one. And I thought this would make, when the sun came out and the heat was, or it was 95, or I thought, oh my gosh, this reflection is going to burn my plants. But it didn't. It actually kept the soil cooler around the plants, and they were much bigger and healthier. The only drawback with this is you have to have like a drip system underneath it to water your plants, because you don't want to be lifting it up and moving it. And also that when the squash plants grow really big, a lot of the shininess is hidden. And then later on they might come in, but they're not going to come in anywhere near as bad as when they do in the beginning there, where they eat your plants down to the ground and where you have nothing, because that's what happened with the small farms crop. And it doesn't cost much to do it. Okay, and then there's lots of different kinds of traps. Like if you have a bunch of gnats in your home, sticky traps work really good, or in a greenhouse. They also tell you when the pest has arrived. You want to monitor it. The only drawback with this, again, you can't be used as a control for your insect, because this attracts a lot of beneficial insects. And I checked on ones outside with this where there was pests, and I think I got more beneficial insects trapped than I did at my actual pests. So this works better in a home, more in the greenhouse. And then if you have like the spotted winged Drosophila, you can make little traps like this with just apple cider vinegar in there with a drop of dish soap as a surfactant, so that when the flies land on the apple cider vinegar that it'll break the surface tension and they'll drown. So that's a really good one. And most of you know that, you know, you can use a little cartridge sheath carton like that and use a hole puncher at the top. Put like half soy sauce and oil in a cup, and then you bury it right below the holes here. Put the lid on so an animal doesn't come along and get it, and bury it down so they can just crawl in there, and then you can trap a whole bunch. And those don't even cost anything. Even an inverted soda bottle with, this is supposed to be for snails and slugs, but I didn't get too many in here. They like my daylilies better. So the best I could do with that is take some Sluggo Plus and then sprinkle it all around my daylilies in the soil there, and then get them that way. So some things, they seem like they should work, but they don't always do. Okay. Now, I want to show you a hack here. When you go to the store and you buy stuff like insecticidal soap or BT or even spinosad, things that are available to the home garden that are organic and safer pesticides, really look at the prices, because this insecticidal soap here, it's 24 ounces and it's $13, and got a nice spray bottle with it. Okay, and this one is right next to it, and it's 12 ounces, and it's the concentrate. This makes 6 gallons, and this is only 1/4 of a gallon or less. So this, the cost of the 6 gallons here was $15. And the cost of buying enough bottles, which is 32 bottles of this, will cost you $416. So this is not going to go very far. If you have just a row of something that has aphids on it, to really control the aphids, you got to spray underneath those leaves and smother their whole body with the soap. It will dry or break down the epidermis on top, the waxy coating on it, and then they will dry out. But you've got to spray them totally with that gel to run off. So this bottle can be wasted after one row. And then you'd have to buy another one, and then another probably, and another. And that would be costing you almost up to $50 just to get enough for your garden for maybe just a couple months, where this is going to last you 2 to 3 years. So save $400.01, or no, $401 if you buy the concentrate, and you can share it with friends and family. You can charge them for one of these and you can make money off of it. But you won't want to do that. Just share the love. Okay, now BT was even worse. The spray was $16.99. The concentrate was $15.99, a whole $1 less. It was an 8-ounce bottle of the concentrate and 32 ounces or 1/4 of the spray. Again, the concentrate made 12 gallons of the BT. And so when you added up all the price, you're saving $800 if you buy the concentrate. And BT doesn't last very long out. The sun and the heat degrade it really quickly. It might last 3 days if you're lucky. Sometimes here when it's 110, well, forget that. It could last an hour. And you have to repeatedly spray it to keep killing the aphids and things that, or not the aphids, but worms that come in. Now, the cabbage butterfly is the first one to come in the spring, and it's always looking for the Brassicaceae family plants like cabbages and things like that in your garden, lay eggs, and it's all wormy. And you got to keep spraying every few days. So why would you buy a $17 spray with it that's only going to last you maybe a couple weeks, when you can have another one and save $800 of the concentrate and save $800? It's insane to me that they would charge prices like that. It's so different. So like, if you're a commercial gardener, that's, you know, they're really getting a good deal. But if you're a home gardener and only have a few plants, everybody reaches for their ready-made sprays, and they're really paying through the nose for them. So next time you go in there, always check price check so you don't get ripped off. Okay, I want to show you a few tricks here. Okay, a lot of people have these black pots, and you know how hot it gets in the summer here? I can't grow things in pots very well if I just grow them in here. You put your hand on there, it's boiling hot. And you can imagine what the roots feel like inside. That's why a lot of the soil dries out so quickly. It just boils away. And so a good trick is to double pot it. Get one big and one smaller. And then you have an insulation. Like this is a roll of insulation. It comes that long. It's for like packaging dishes and stuff when you're moving. And it's condensed foam. It's stronger than bubble wrap. It's really, it will hold up. And it's got little bubbles in it, you can see. And those bubbles will keep that heat out. Just like a bubble wrap that kind of makes the insulation. So, and it comes perforated, so you can just kind of tear it off to what length or width you need. So on here, that's all I do is make like a little ring. Just stick it in here and stretch it out. You can even make 2 or 3 layers if you want, if your outer pot is big enough compared to the pot you're going to put your plant in. I did put these out yesterday, and I felt the outside of the pot when the sun was beating on it was very, very warm. And then I put my hand inside and it was cool. So it was doing its job. I put my hand inside, actually the inside pot. So this I put inside like this. And okay, so you see that. And then I'll go around and I'll just take a marker and mark where to cut this so it's right down flush with the bottom pot. Then you won't see it out. You can also use things like sawdust, coconut coir, peat moss and stuff like that and try to eke it down in these, but this is cheap enough and fast that and lasts really good. It won't condense like if peat moss gets wet or coconut coir, you know, they can sink down into the pot, then it will still expose. This is not going to do that, and it will stay insulated. And then your plants will stay nice and cool. And if you have a hole in your pot, like that's pretty big like this, and you have critters and they will get into your pots, like over at the extension, some got into my daylilies. Well, I take an old chore girl or stainless steel scrubby, cut a little ball off like that, stick it in the holes, So the water can drain out. And the critters can't get in. They're not gonna be chewing through that stainless steel to get in there. And all other like roly-polies and other things are not gonna go in there, and probably not even earwigs are gonna work their way if you really compress it well. If you have a hole in the bottom of your pot where the drainage is, you can take a couple layers of coffee filters, and you can put it down at the bottom, and that will stop soil from eking out and getting all over your walkways. And that's a cheap little trick to do that. So hopefully that one. Also, at some of the thrift stores, you can find these like strainers, like grease strainers or whatever from cookers. Well, I have a soil sieve that I use to sift out all the millions of rocks that is in my central point soil. And I do have one with a wooden frame. It's really heavy, and holding it like that over a wheelbarrow and going like that. And I'm feeling as I'm getting older that I'm not as strong. So I will use this, especially when I'm potting up stuff. This is good. Like I've gotten some Happy Frog potting soil, and I was just transplanting some plants. And I thought the bark was a little too big for the little pots I was putting in. So I took this and I sifted out like this really easily. And then I got this beautiful soil coming out underneath. And then I took the bark pieces and I put them as a mulch for under one of my bushes. It worked really good. And you can get these for like $1 or something. And then they're different size holes. There's one that's round and it's a little bigger. This one gets out some of those big rocks for me. And then I'm not straining myself. I don't get the arthritis in the joints. Sometimes when you're lifting something heavy like that, you get like golf elbow or tennis elbow. And this just keeps me from getting that. Very inexpensive. I haven't seen that these really rust very badly. I've had them a couple years, and I really, they look, pretty new actually. Also, when those 5-gallon buckets have their little, see the top here? This gets real brittle in the sunlight when you keep your buckets out. Your buckets almost fall apart too, but these come off first. And so they have these replacement handles that are nice and big, and they don't hurt your hand if you have something heavy that you're carrying, and they just snap together. You can get them like on Amazon. So it's really easy to make a new handle on your buckets. Okay, and then sometimes people buy fruit trees in the spring and they plant them. And they come into the plant clinic, show us a picture of the trunk of their tree. And on the southwest side, there's a big canker, like this kind of shape on that southwest side. We call it the southwest blight, because the sun beats hardest there. It basically scorches the bark, or in the wintertime, when the bark is frozen and the sun comes out and quickly makes the ice crystals under the bark expand, you can see cracks, and then you can get fungal infections and stuff in there. We tell them to clean it out real smooth and nice, as long as it's not over like half of the tree. Otherwise it's a goner. And then wrap it with tree wrap. There's this that kind of expands a little as the tree's grown, but you want to replace your, this probably every 6 months. Spring and fall, so the tree, is never constricted. You can also use that white plastic, kind of goes in a twirl like, or use a 50% white latex paint with 50% water, and that will also act as to bounce off the heat and sunlight off of the bark, so it's not overheated. Okay, and then we have my last trick. If you're not getting very many fruit set on your tomato plants, this mimics like bees when their wings vibrate and the pollen falls. Because usually the wind will blow the blossoms and then that drops. It's a different kind of flower so that it's not like the bees come in and can get the pollen easily. But people have used this. You turn it on and then you just touch it on a leaf here. I'll do it on my rosemary here. And you, if there's flowers, you just touch it up against close to the flowers, and that vibration is going to make that pollen fall if it's ripe. And then you're going to get a ton more fruit set. So hopefully that'll help. Okay. Now I just want to show you my favorite tools. I've used a lot. I like to kind of look everywhere for them. I use this one. This is the cheaper version. I'd suggest you get the one where it's welded here. So this isn't going to be coming off and flying out somewhere and get on somebody. But it's welded on both sides and this whole thing is metal. This is going to last a lifetime. This I got over at the co-op. They were only like $11.99 or something. I said, oh, that's really cheap. So I got a whole bunch for my people that work in the garden with me, because they were bringing these little dandelion pickers and stuff to help me weed. And I said, oh, that's not going to do it. So I got these. The thing is, it comes with a little like shim that digs down into here, and it can crack the wood, and the wood dries in the heat. And then this comes loose and it went flying once when I was really hacking away. And I couldn't find one of those metal shims in here. So I got a little elbowed hinge, and then I beveled it down on the grinder to get it down into this area here. And now it's really sturdy, but it'll last probably a long time. But if you can't get the parts for it and it's prone to fly off, it doesn't even have a hole here where you could actually screw it into the wood. Just spend a little bit more money on that and go to Lars and get that saved money and buy a good tool. Another is watering. Most people's plants have problems because of poor watering. That's the #1 cause when they come into the plant clinic. Use a moisture meter, like inside plants are good. On the outside, you can use them too. The thing is, most of the potting soil is pretty well the same. So these pick up the electric or resistance through the soil. It has 2 little copper wires going from the shank all the way up. A lot of people grab it like this, like if they're outside and they dig this down in the clay soil to see what the moisture is, then they yank it up. This whole head comes off because those two little wires are very fragile in there. And if this gets it moved around and they get loose in your moisture meter, it's not going to work very well. But these are a really good thing to have in mostly inside. Now outside, when you're watering, a lot of people water by hand. And they look and see that the water's puddling on top and say, oh, that's enough. And then they go on to the next, like tomato. And then they come in the plant clinic and say, oh, look at this blossom end rot. What can I do about it? Well, a lot of it's inconsistent watering going from drought and then a lot of water back and forth, inconsistent that way. Or they plant it in too cold of a soil, or they overwater so that you get a little root rot and stuff, because all of those things can inhibit the calcium from being brought up into the plant where it needs to be. And sometimes there's not enough calcium in the soil too, and that can cause a blossom end rot. It's all about the calcium and the uptake of it. So I had a friend in my garden and I gave her a present. I gave her this and she looked at it in the weirdest way. She had no idea what the heck it was. And I told her it's a soil probe. Because you said that all your tomatoes are getting blossom end rot. And you said you watered for, I don't know how many minutes a day. She did every day. And I says, how do you know how much what you have in here? All the soils are different. Sandy loam clay or granitic soils, they all will show different on these meters. And so you really don't know what's going on. How many times have you used one of these? And make sure when you do put it in the soil, you hold onto the shank and not the head so that you don't have that problem of it coming off. How many times have you put that in and you felt like you didn't get a good reading on it, wondered why? Because you went to another bed that had a different kind of soil and it didn't show the same, and you said you watered the same. This here will go down 12 inches in the soil. What I like to do is go down and you go up to about here and you bring it up and you can see what's going on for 6 whole inches here. And most of the feeder roots on plants, like your vegetables and that, are up in the top 6 inches. So then you can look at that. And when my friend did a probe and brought her soil up, it was wet maybe that much, and the rest was totally dry, and she was absolutely shocked. And she says, since she's had this, she hasn't had any problem with the blossom end rot or watering. You can use it in the lawn, around trees and shrubs. If you want to go down 12 inches for some shrubs and trees, you go down 6, and then you look at that, and then you pull it out, and then you go down once more down in that same hole, and that will be the 12 inches. And then you can get a really good look and feel of what's going on in your soil. And these are only like $15 or so on Amazon. It's stainless steel. It's never going to rust. And oh my gosh, it's such a game changer when it comes to trying to figure out how much water that your plants need, how long to put the water on for. So much better than this, because it's outside, I don't trust it very much in the soils, because I think something's wet and it totally doesn't show it wet. And then if that's the case, then people will overwater and then you get the blossom rot again. So I would totally recommend this. This is a great tool for your beloved gardener friends. Okay. Another tool I really like is this one. This one has a sharp point on. It's got a beveled side here. It's very sharp on the edges. And oh, does this get the weeds good? I just go down and and that you can yank stuff out. It's very, very strong. I haven't had any problems with it at all. And it's a good scraper. You can take that and just the little seedlings, like the little purslane and the prostrate spurge that's growing now and sprouting everywhere. You just scrape it along there and it takes them out really quickly. You can make furrows with it. You can see that. You can just go like that. And I use that probably as much as I do the one with the fork on the end. Okay, I used to like this one a lot because it has a nice long edge and it's thin here, but it's not strong enough to get weeds that have a strong tap root. You can see it went crooked on me. I had to put it in a vise and try to push it back, and it's still a little crooked. So it's got a weakness because of this long handle. It's not strong enough for the pressure you would put on the end. So be cautious about this one. You can probably get a better type of tool. And another thing I use is a hori for dividing plants and digging down deep in the rocky old soil that I have. It's straight and sharp on one side, and then it's serrated on another, and then it has measurement on there. So if you're digging holes for bulbs and stuff, it's very handy. And then tile cutter. This is great for getting the weeds out of cracks from bricks, and like if you have a raised bed and you have gravel around and the weeds are coming up right on the bottom, this will slice them really good. And you can see it's very sharp, and you can use a sharpener on each side of it. And I just go down, I'll go slice this way, slice that way in a crack, and it will take everything out. So those are the tips I have for you today, except one last one. If you don't want to have cats in your yard, you might want to invest in a little cayenne pepper. So when you put your barriers around, you can just kind of spray it or put this around even on the outside of your beds, and that so that when they sniff around, they won't want to jump up and get in your bed maybe. But you can get a whole bunch of cayenne for fairly cheap, and see how that works. So I'm going to be using that and see if I can train my kitty. Okay, so does anybody have any questions?
We have 2 questions in the chat. There may be more that are added while we're answering these ones. One is for you, and the question was, how long, excuse me, how long do you keep the cloth cover over your plants?
I keep it over until probably harvest time. Actually, because it's so hot here and the sun is so intense, it's not like back east where you have the high humidity, and so it kind of tempers the effect of that hot sun on flower or plants. I even put a shade cloth. I have the big stakes, and I have my tomatoes like in handy panels. And then I have a shade cloth over that, and it seems like they do beautifully. So on the cloth, you might want to keep it until you harvest, especially things where like leaf miner and that, in case they lay eggs in there and then you're eating them. Oh, one last thing it just reminded me. Okay, another thing over at Lars Goodwill is stakes. You know what these are? Curtain rods. And you get 2 stakes, of course, and you get the finial on one end or both ends. So you got 2 stakes, and then here's another variety, and you can tie up your tall plants with these, and they look so cute up in the garden, and they only cost probably a couple bucks each. So very strong, sturdy. You could even put a rebar down and hold them even stronger if you need to. So I forgot to show you that. Okay, and there's another question.
Yes, the other question was for Susan, if she's still around. It was about
I
fruit.
don't see her around.
You
and
might
it's-
have the answer as well.
Yeah,
The question was if pear trees are similar to apple trees in that they make more than they need and you need to cut off the extras.
oh yeah, definitely. Most fruit trees you gotta thin. Believe me, I've lost peaches, I've lost cherries, I've lost and pear trees split from splitting because they overbore, and yeah, you really have to thin them down. It's really hard. I mean, it's one of the hardest things to do, to have to thin, because you just think of all that good fruit going to waste. But you have to do it, otherwise your tree will probably split, and then you'll have cankers come in, and insects are attracted to cuts and wounds in the bark. So yeah, thin them.
That makes
I think
sense.
you can probably pick up that, either call the extension or the look online and say how many pairs. I think it was like 2 pairs per stem or something like that, that you don't want more than that, because they can get really big and heavy.
Mhm.
And the more you thin them, the bigger the pairs that you keep are going to be.
That makes sense. That
Mhm.
definitely. Kind of like thinning seedlings. It's always
Yeah,
sad to see it
yeah.
happen, but you got to do it.
Okay.
And we don't have any other questions that have came in, so I think we are ready to wrap up. With that, I will say thank you to everyone for attending. Thank you, Marsha, and I know Susan's not on camera, but thank you to Susan as well.